ready to build resiliency, create a healthy lifestyle, and overcome adversity with a warrior mindset. This is Define the Fight with Mariah Prussia.
Hey, welcome everybody on this fine Monday morning to Define the Fight. We are heating up here in Fargo, North Dakota. Life is good. And I thought I'd bring a firecracker in. You know, she's in the heat of Texas right now. But we're going to get up to 50-some degrees today. So you know what? We are blessed. So joining me today is an entrepreneur, author, keynote speaker, and business coach. Kim Nagel is so much more. She is the author of The Damn Plan, guiding individuals on how to find freedom, love, and money in business. And I know from speaking from experience here, she really is a diamond in the rough. She is a gem. She provides a lot of different insights to individuals because being in business, there are different things that come into play. But then also in life, she's a great friend. And you know what? She literally is a woman with a plan. So Kim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mariah. That's a woman with a damn plan, by the way.
She is. She is. You are. How are you doing this fine Monday morning?
You know what? I am doing great. It's kind of crazy, but I just finished coffee with a former Fargo gal.
It comes full circle, doesn't it?
Right here in Austin.
Yeah.
Yes, it's kind of awesome how circles come together.
They do. Now, what are you traveling to Texas for? Is it for fun or is it for business? Or both?
Well, I don't know if you know about me, but I'm a bit of a roaming gnome. I have designed my business such that I can go to warmer places in the winter. I can work from any place that I pretty much want to. And I spent 2 weeks over in Arizona with family and friends and just enjoying some warm Arizona weather. And now I am making my way back to Minnesota.
No, that's awesome. Well, and the nice thing is, too, now you have another book, too, that is coming out, Kim, right?
Well, actually, I'm, as with all writers, there's lots of books in the works. So I am writing 2 books. One I mentioned to you. One is called the Do the Damn Thing. I'm stumbling over my own words this morning. But it's the title of the new book coming out this year is Do the Damn Thing. And it is all about just, do the damn thing. There's just way too many people making excuses about why they can't. And it's time we ask the question, well, how can I?
100%.
And really make that our mindset shift. And excuses are like anchors. They hold our backsides down to the ground and keep us exactly where we are. So Do the Damn Thing is coming out. Then I'm also doing a short version of the damn plan called Plan to Be Profitable. And it is really all about the planning process and what we need to do, the actual technical details of planning to be profitable from the beginning and not making hope a strategy.
Oh, 100%. Now, you clearly have your own business, and I know that you've gone through faced different things, right? So as we start our business, we know what we know, and then we start adding different things. And I know when it comes to business right away, I think the biggest struggle for individuals is budgeting because you don't know what numbers are necessarily coming in right away. You can guesstimate, but then from that guess is how you're really creating part of your plan is literally by like this is what it might be. So I know that for you, when you go in and start working with individuals on their business, what are some of the things that you face or how do you direct them? Because you're talking about gearing them towards freedom, towards love, towards money and business. What are some of those things and what does that look like?
Well, you interestingly enough, you said you only know what you know. And that is true with anything. But people get really tied in knots when it comes to business about the idea of not knowing. But let me just ask you, if you took a brand new job today, you know what you know going in, and you don't know what you don't know. And yet when it comes to business, many people are just it stops them dead in their tracks because they somehow think they have to know everything coming out of the gate. So the first thing that I work with people on is getting comfortable with not knowing everything And I can't tell you how many people go, but I don't know. I don't know. I can't go forward. Well, let me ask you another question. How do you know how to do what you know how to do?
And then
Very
there's a
simply,
pause.
how did you learn to do what you do? You did it. You did it. We don't learn how to ride a bike. You know me, I love to ride bike. When I climbed my first big hill, I didn't even know how to climb a hill. And there is techniques with climbing a hill on a bike. I only knew how to ride on flatland. And so I had to experience it kind of the hard way, but I made it all the way to the top. And then I learned and I did better. So when it comes to working on businesses, it's all the same principle. We need to get comfortable with not knowing, open up our minds and be curious. And let me just say, be playful. Be playful. Ask what if. What would happen if I went in this direction? What would happen if I went in that direction? What would happen if I developed my product this way versus that way? Not being stuck in your rut is the number one key to business success. Always asking, how are we doing and what can we do better? Period.
Well, and
If
having
you're
the
not
ability to
asking
adapt.
that, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you've done it in your business world. Just continually asking, how can I take what I know? How can I take my skills and do better?
Well, I think a lot of people too is when there becomes a fear of scarcity, which happens in
Oh,
business, right? So
yes,
you're going to have ebbs and flows. You're going to have, let's just
yeah,
talk about like prime example, like the gym industry. It's going to be higher clearly the beginning of the year, then come into the fall, but you're going to have spots in the summertime or closer to holidays. It's going to slow down a little bit. So what can you do? And I know when fear starts coming into play, people will just spitball and throw things at the wall and see what sticks and they'll try to find something quick that can bring in funds. And that's an easy way to set
right,
yourself up for failure. So it's like, okay, how can I
yeah,
plan like you're talking about? How can I make a plan that is going to help me in the low parts of the business, but then also help really accelerate the high parts of the business? And fear is always going to be some little piece of the puzzle, but it shouldn't be to the point
yes.
where it prevents you from taking that leap of faith into starting something new.
Oh, I mean, you know the drill. You absolutely know the drill. In the Damn Plan, the book that I have out now, the Damn Plan: How to Find Freedom, Love, and Money in Your Business. I think I was very playful with the idea of motivation, and that we're motivated by only two things: pain or pleasure. And we're predominantly motivated by avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. That's just plain and simple. And I get a little catty in the book and talk about, it's the only reason why we're here is because our ancestors avoided the pain of getting eaten by a tiger long enough to enjoy the pleasure of sex. So that is, I got a little, in the book,
It's
I said,
true.
no, you're not going to be able to unsee that. And it's the truth. It is the truth that we will constantly avoid pain. And what you just talked about when it comes to tough times or even getting started, it's painful. I mean, you've watched me kind of work through my fitness and improving my own fitness of going, I've since we've known each other, I've lost 50 plus pounds. I can now ride a bike for 40 miles without, having a problem. I, have two brand new knees and can climb to the top of mountains. That required some pain. There was pain involved in that. The pain of getting out there and working out when I didn't want to, of staying focused on what I know was going to work. And to get back to the business analogy, you're absolutely right, Mariah. When times get tough, to avoid pain, to, oh my gosh, I got to try something new because things are a little tough right now. Well, then we jump to that newness and we lose focus, or sometimes we're just on the brink of a breakthrough and it's really getting harder and harder. So we back off, we let go, and we quit pushing forward. And then we have to start all over again. So very, very simply to clarify it, we're motivated by um, our desire for pleasure, and we are also motivated by our desire not to be in pain. So how does this work in business? Well, when you find that groove and it works, keep doing more of it because it brings pleasure. If it's not bringing you pleasure, you won't do it.
Right.
I'll just put it right out there. If you're in a business that is not bringing you pleasure in some way or form, you will not be motivated to continue.
And I think that's really truly where they define the fight. Is this something that I want to continue? Is this my true mission or is it not? And that's
Mm-hmm.
when you make a decision. Let's circle back to, before you are where you are today, who you were and how that drove you to become so much more.
Oh, this is I thank you first of all for asking if I want to dig into this, because I think it's a challenge to tell our truth. It is really a challenge, not only to tell our truth in public to others, but mostly to tell the truth to ourselves. And it really hasn't been that many years in the scope of an entire life that I came to a point in my life where I literally was asking, is this all there is? Is this all there will be? And it didn't come with a big bang. I mean, some people have major life events that turn them that that turn everything on the dime. But I had already gone through a whole pile of major life events that uh, I learned how to, let's just say, I learned how to live in chaos. I learned how to live in hard times. And it was like boiling the frog, little bit of pain here, little bit of pain here, there, giving up, quitting on that thing or quitting on the other thing. And I came to a place where I was just asking, is this all there ever will be? And I started doing the math of life. And I talk about the math of life in the upcoming book, but it's really about sitting down and saying, if I'm gone tomorrow, what will I regret not having done? Or how will I feel about my life? And at that point, I was feeling as if I had been sitting on the sidelines of my life and coaching everyone else and helping everybody else achieve what they were going to achieve, and not being fully engaged in my own life, not excelling, not pushing myself to the limits. Um, and it was well, let's just say it was a very, very sad place. And getting out of that required telling my own damn truth, telling the truth about where I was and why I was there. And why I was at that place was fear. You've talked about it, fear. Fear of being rejected for being the person I really was. And I wrote a phrase some time ago that seems to resonate with a lot of people. And the phrase is just very simply, I once became someone else, I once became someone that someone else could love. And I'm not talking about intimate relationships. I had become someone that was acceptable to other people by giving up who I really was. And who I really am is who you see today. Uh, just more of I am that roaming gnome. I am that person with a zest for life and willingness to try hard things. But I was always cautioned, well, you might hurt yourself. Someone will think you're weird if you, at the age of 60, decide to take up cycling for serious. Why would you wait that long? It's too late. So I was listening to all those things. And it was at that moment of just saying, is this all there really is, and not accepting it. It sounds so simple. And I'm pretty sure that there's listeners out there that have perhaps said the same thing, and perhaps also become someone that is palatable to other people, someone who will be accepted. And I just simply said, no, I am going to be who I am. I am going to take my God given gifts. I'm going to take this person that sees life not from a scarcity mode, but from a mode of abundance, from a mode of positive thinking. And I'm going to be all of that. I am not going to let this world get me down, period. I'm not going to let the man get me. It's just, it, but I lost some friends in doing that. I had to give up part of my life to do that.
I think when you're looking at the fact of a lot of people right now are redefining what is life and what does that look like?
Hmm.
What does it currently look like and what do I want it to be? And I think it's a great thing
Right.
because we go in different chapters of our lives, right? Our life literally is a series of multiple books. Some people's series
It
drag
is.
on for like a longer period of time where others have really short, concise, boom, I'm moving on to the next thing, and that's okay. But I think we all need to look at what is life to us, and if it's not what we're currently living, how can we create the changes so that we can get there? And I know, speaking with you multiple times, like I've always been on the grind. Go, 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 go. Like, okay, Mariah, you have this huge plate that's full of so many things. And it's like, yeah, that's great and all. And a lot of people would like to have some of those different things. But at the same point, I don't need to carry a platter with me. I don't. I
Mm-mm.
can take what I
No.
want during that time frame. And as I get older, it's a new vision starts coming into play on, hold on, what do I want for tomorrow? What do I want for today? What do I want a
Right.
couple years from now? And you having kids that are grown up, mine are clearly getting older. Antonio's an adult
Yeah.
now, and Jace is in 7th grade. I look back and there's always going to be a sense of guilt. And especially when you are really putting your foot on the accelerator to make sure that you're putting food on the table. And I know you've experienced this
Yeah.
too, where it's like, well, I have to. I need to work
I
X
have
amount of
to.
hours. Otherwise I'm not going to be able to provide. Now you have obviously, faced some of those things too, right, Kim?
Yes, absolutely. I kind of still to this day whitewash my story just a little bit. Um, and because telling the truth sometimes is painful. So at that point when I was saying, is this all there really is? I had come through the grind. I had all my children were grown and I was a grandma. But I had come through a great deal of loss. Way back in the 80s. Uh, I was, or as I like to say, the late 1900s. I it sounds so it's I don't know, it sounds so much more romantic than the 80s, but
What was wrong with the
in the
80s? What was wrong with the 80s? I mean, it
not,
was
not not a thing
it
was
was
wrong
the
with the
lace
80s.
it was the lace gloves, the lace whatever for the hair. I know
Oh, and
Kim.
I so rocked the hair. I mean, I so rocked the total permanent, and the hair. And I was raising my kids, busy raising kids. Um, my second daughter, Michelle, uh, I found myself in the midst of owning my own company, my first ever company. I started when I was 24. And oh my gosh, I was in seventh heaven being my own boss. I started an interior design workroom, landed JC Penney company for Pete's sake as my cornerstone client, right out of the gate. All arrows were pointing in the success direction, the fabulous entrepreneurial dream come true direction. And I found myself pregnant with my second child at that time, and unfortunately she was born 2 months early. And at that time they didn't know what they know now, and she passed away when she was 6 months old. And at that very same time in my life, I let's just say it was the 80s. And for those who might remember the 80s, it was one of the first market crashes, or not the first market crash, heaven forbid. That was in my dad's era. It was the savings and loans went down. Oil went from being $10 a barrel or $100 a barrel to $10 a barrel overnight. It was awful. And my entire clientele now has lost everything because of those oil prices. I was out in Western North Dakota. They had just dropped oil wells, and everybody was excited about it. And I lost everything overnight.
Kim, you were just starting to dive into some different things that you had faced. And clearly, my heart goes out to you because the loss of a child, no matter what age, is always a challenge. And there's a lot of healing that goes along with it. But for you to be such a strong individual, I know that it didn't come without facing different adversities in life.
Yeah. I think, it's through adversity sometimes that our mettle is proved, and we have two choices. Well, we probably have more than two, but I always think of it as pretty much black and white. We can roll up in a corner and be defeated, or we can, as you would say, define the fight and decide how we're going to move forward. And I think that, and I've pondered how is it that some move forward and some don't, and there's no magic answer to it, to be honest, Mariah.
No, I don't think there is. I think it just comes down to a person that is like, okay, they make a choice. And sometimes it's hard to make that choice. But, what's worse? Sitting in that same spot where whether it's sadness, whether it's anger, whether it's jealousy, whatever that is, that's a choice to sit there. Or do you want to see what's on the other side of the mountain where you can actually feel and see the sun? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Right. So we can live in that pain, or we can choose to turn that pain into power. And I know that you did that. You were talking about the 1980s and the shift of landing J.C. Penney, and then in regards to the oil dropping, what were the next phases, prior to us going into break?
Well, I'll just fast forward, because sometimes, I don't know about you, Mariah, but sometimes when you tell your story, you think you're crazy. You're going, oh my gosh, you sound really crazy right now. But I stayed married in an abusive relationship for nearly 37 years. And I'm not going to dig into why. I'm not going to dig into any blame, shame, or guilt, or you're crazy kind of stuff. I just did. I did. And I have three beautiful children who are very successful, who have broken the chains of dependency. And that is that's the joy of my life. I watching 7 beautiful grandchildren and my kids blossom, having broken generational chains, is everything else is wonderful, but nothing else matters than they do for me. And I think, you ask about how did I overcome it? Well, truly, how do you overcome anything? Sometimes it's not for you, it is for someone else. At any one time in my life, it wasn't about me. It was about, oh my gosh, I must do this for someone else. And um, we get through adversity sometimes because of that. I think it's harder when we're doing it just for ourselves. It really is. It is so much easier. It plays so much better in our head as a movie reel when we are doing it, becoming better for someone else, when we are surviving for someone else. And there's nothing wrong with either way, doing it for yourself or doing it for um, other people. It is very human. And I think sometimes we start, we play the this is right, this is wrong game way too much. And I think one of the coolest things that anyone ever said to me was, there's more than one right answer. There's more than one right answer. And I take that a little further and say, we all do life differently. We're all going to live this life differently. And it is what resonates with you. It's what allows you to live in your fullest power. And we're all going to have different levels of power. So I think so oftentimes we're looking externally and we're looking for that ultimate guide. How do you get through? Well, I can tell you how I got through. I got through one foot in front of the other. One foot in front of the other, choosing not to stay where I was, and also clearly identifying the skills that I had. What are the skills that I have that are going to allow me to succeed? And those skills were skills that I grew through adversity. I think probably the biggest, and I'm going to give my dad full credit for this. I allude to this in the first book just a little bit, but I started my very first business at the age of 16. So the second one in the 80s was at the age of 24. But at the age of 16, I started my first business because I wanted a pair of jeans. Okay. I just wanted a pair of Lee button fly jeans so I could be as stylish as all the other girls whose daddies bought them a pair of jeans. And I am forever grateful that my dad simply said, "Oh, you'd look great in a pair of Lee button fly jeans. How are you going to get them? How are you going to get them? How are you going to do that?" It's not that I couldn't have them. He was wanting me to figure out how to get them myself.
Figure out a solution.
And if there's anything we can share with this generation, with anybody that we're trying to lift up, we will not lift them up by giving them everything they ever needed. We will lift them up by encouraging them to find the solution and be willing to stand in the gap with them, be willing to stand beside them, not to do everything for them, not to give them the perfect guide, but for them to discover their own damn answers. Because we all will do this life differently, and we each must find our own answers. I'm sorry that I don't have a checklist.
I don't think there,
I would
but
love
I don't
to
think
say,
there is a
do this,
checklist.
then this, but
No,
there isn't one. There isn't one.
There isn't. And you spoke about sacrifices, right? So we do, especially if you're a parent, you're going to do a lot of different sacrificing clearly for your children. And then you're going to sacrifice different things that you may need for yourself because you want to make sure that they're taken care of first. And as we know, as our children grow, the sacrifices start to shift a little bit, right? So the pendulum starts swinging a little bit more towards you because you're like, hold on now. Okay, my kids are grown up. Now I need to make sure that I am putting myself first. And it's not that you don't have to put yourself first. You should be putting yourself first, whether your kids are young or if they're adults, wherever that is, because if you aren't taking care of yourself, how do you actually expect to take care of your kids? You can't. But you were talking about seeking and looking for external guides. And I think that's where we fail as a society. Is we are looking outward on, okay, where can I get this? Where can I get that? Yes. And the reality is you have to find and utilize your internal guide. You have to be willing to say, hey, hold on, call yourself out. I did this, or I made that choice, or, oh, hey, hold on a second. It's those aha moments where it's like, hold yourself accountable, where you're owning how you show up. But also, too, it's going into opening that clamshell of trauma, of emotion, of whatever that you packed throughout your life and taking it out one article or one piece at a time and slowly working on those things. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge for every single one of us. And you talked earlier about pain versus pleasure. I can tell you when you start doing the work on yourself, you are going to be consumed with pain. It's going to feel like somebody just threw 800 pounds on your back, and you're not even going to be to the point where you're doing a normal crawl. You're doing the army crawl, or you're like being a sloth where you're pulling yourself across the ground, and it might be just one step a day or one step during that month that you're taking. But the key thing is you're taking it. And that's the hard, it's the hard part. But then as you start moving slowly through pain, it's only bringing you that much closer. You're inching towards pleasure, towards joy, towards true happiness. And that's what we all want.
Right.
At the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want
Right.
to be
Right.
happy. We all want to have love. We want to be surrounded by unbelievable people. We all want opportunities. And then, hey, like, how can we be our best selves? But the reality
Yeah.
is, it
Yeah.
doesn't show up overnight. And that's where you have to choose, okay, how am I going to define my fight? When am I going to define the fight? And when am I going to get into the fight? That's really what it comes down to. But what are some of different, like two takeaways, whether it's business or personal, that you think are very important for people to understand in life?
Well, I think you were talking about. I was talking about what my dad said to me. How are you going to do this? And you've mentioned it a couple times, uh, but we haven't specifically mentioned it. But here's something: a key takeaway that I know is the singular reason for my success is that I intentionally have chosen time and time again to surround myself with people that believe in me more than I believe in myself. Because there will be days when you are all up in your head, smack talking yourself and thinking you're not enough. And you need to reach out to those people, not for them to go, oh, Kim, you're so good at this. You're so great. You want to reach out to people who are going to kick you in the backside with love, that are just going to say, get going. So, what if you had your knees replaced? When are you climbing your next mountain? How are you going to get back in shape so that you can do what you love to do? And then, you have to ask yourself four important questions. And, you and I both know that this conversation about how we both made it through is is a conversation that requires days. It requires entire books. Is but I boiled it down to four things. So, well, first of all, I want to remind people, surround yourself with people that believe in you more than you believe in yourself, and who are willing, and you've given them permission to kick your backside with love. I just left somebody that I told her, hey, I'm going to kick your backside with love. If you want this and you've told me you want this, I'm going to be standing here, and I'm going to not only be cheering you on, but I'm going to be holding you accountable. If you are not surrounded by people who are at that level, your circle is too small and you need to get a bigger circle. That was the one thing that got me through the crash of my first business during the crash of the 80s, and got me through a lot of other life pieces along the way. But then I had to ask myself four questions. What am I willing to do? What am I not willing to do? What am I willing to give up? And what am I not willing to give up? And in those four questions, you will find your answers. Because whereas I'm willing to go through more pain than the average bear with getting back into being a healthy 60-plus-year-old woman, I know that not everybody is. And that's okay. That is perfectly okay. Decide your level of willingness, but your level of willingness has got to match what you say you want. And let me clarify how that works. So I mentioned I lost 50 pounds. I lost 50 pounds simply by quitting eating sugar, drinking more water, and giving up wheat products. Okay. It was my key to success. It's a natural way for me to eat. I just don't eat wheat. I don't eat anything white or processed. And that's period, period. And so someone asked me, well, how did you do it? So I told them that I had given up sugar. Well, her first response was, well, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. Well, then you have to decide how badly you want to be in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing holds true for business. We're talking about business. So, how many rejections does it take to get a yes in some of our businesses? Sometimes we have to make 100 calls or put 100 proposals out there to get one positive response. The numbers will be different in every business. But if you're not willing to be rejected, maybe you need to not go into business, because it's a natural part of business.
100%.
So, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to do? And then, what are you not willing to do? One of the things I wasn't willing to do was sacrifice my family for business. I learned that the hard way. I did it once and I won't do it again. If my business comes in the way of my family, and I'm business partners with my youngest daughter, and that's in our partnership agreement, should this ever come between us, we're out. If we can't figure it out, and guess what? 7 years later, we've always figured it out.
That's awesome.
We've always figured it out, period. So I think, those key takeaways, know what you're willing to do, and don't say you want something when you're not willing to do what it takes.
Well, you're not willing
Because
to commit
that
to
only
it.
gives you, but it only perpetuates the circle, Mariah, of guilt and shame. If
Mhm.
I'm not willing to sacrifice, let's just say I'm not willing to put my finances at risk to go into business, and it requires that the business I want to do is going to put me on the financial edge. Let's just say that's on the table. If I am not willing to sacrifice at that level, don't do it. Don't do it, because you won't.
Right. Right.
Just say you don't want to do it. And don't think that somebody else's success is a measure of yours.
The comparison kills,
Your
right? Comparison
The
is the biggest killer.
comparison kills.
It is.
Yeah.
Kim,
Yeah.
you gave some really great insight on what are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? What are you willing to give up? What are you not willing to give up, right? Those are a lot of key, great questions for people to ask themselves. But how do individuals find out, or how can they connect with you?
Well, the easiest way is just through my website. Just go to damplan.com. DAMN, Determined Decisions, Act Consistently, Mind Your Business, No Excuses. Greatest acronym in the world. Here, I got a little tip for you, Mariah. I'm an old English major. Do you know that the only word you can spell from the 4 letters DAMN is damn?
Well, hey, and that's why you went with it.
That's why I went with it. Because it's the only way. It's literally, damn is the only way. You must make determined decisions. And determined decisions are decisions that you make that are backed up based in your truth. First of all, based in the truth of what you want and need, and backed up with your resolve, your commitment, and your willingness to act. If you are not willing to do what it takes, that's got to be the key takeaway for how do you get through hard times. If you're not willing to do what it's going to take, just
100%.
admit to that. No blame, no shame.
Yeah, be honest
My
with
life
yourself.
is not yours is not mine. Be honest. Tell the truth. If you like sugar that much, go for it. But if you
Don't.
if you,
Please,
if you
please don't
don't,
go for
don't,
please
no,
don't
no,
please
no.
don't go for the sugar. But Kim, you are always a very insightful, positive, and inspirational individual. And I want to thank you for making time to come on Define the Fight today, because I know that you continue to, day in and day out, define your fight and help others find theirs. So again, if you guys want to learn more in regards to finding Kim, it's damplan.com. And I think with how you chose your word, I think it's important for all of us just to break open the dam and move forward in life. And that's what it's all about. So again, thank you so much for joining us today on Define the Fight.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I feel bad for coming to you on the road, but this is the life I've chosen.
Hey, on the road again we go. Until next week, we will talk and see you guys soon.